Today on the show, we're going to discuss whiskey flavors and where they come from. Then I'm going to crack open a bottle of Wayne Gretzky's 4-grain. This is from the Craftsman series. It's bottled at 50%. It's made with wheat, oat, rye, and barley. Stay tuned. So saying I like whiskey is a little bit like saying I like an idea more so than I like a specific flavor. There's such a wide range of flavors that come from whiskey, you could really enjoy one and really not enjoy another. They're both whiskey. There's different flavor profiles that come from different countries, different flavor profiles that come from different regions. So really, when you say you like whiskey, it still might be hit or miss with any specific bottle. So where do all these flavors come from, and how do they get into the whiskey? Well, Whisky Magazine has a tasting wheel that breaks it down into 8 specific whiskey categories, right? So whiskey flavors, the 8 sort of broad categories are cereal flavors, fruity flavors, floral flavors, peaty flavors, fainty flavors, sulfury flavors, woody flavors, and winey flavors. Now, the flavors in the first 6 categories all come from the process of making whiskey before it goes into the barrels. So the distilling, or what's used in the distillation, or the mash that you use, and so on. So looking at the first category, the cereal flavors, these are brought to you by the grain selection. So depending on what type of grain they use, depending on if it's mashed or if it's malted, that'll change the flavor that will be added from the grains. So that is also broken into categories, and the categories are cooked mash, cooked veg, husky, malt extract, yeasty, and solvent. Now, even in the small category, when you look at it, this is a wide range of flavors. So this goes from things like porridge and bran and cooked potato skins to mashed potato, bottled corn, dried hops, malted milk, cattle, cake, boiled pork, sausage, gravy, and then when you get into the solvent, you're getting into your nail varnish remover, your bubble gum, your paint, your soda, and your pine essence. Pine essence, I think, is a big one. Next category would be fruity flavors, and the fruity flavors are more appealing aspects that arise from the general production process. They tend to be sweet and fragrant. So fruity flavors break down into citric, fresh fruit, cooked fruit, dried fruit. Citric, obviously you got your oranges, your lemon zest, your kiwis. Fresh fruit is the apples, pears. Cooked fruit, you're getting into stewed apples, marmalades, jams, candied fruits, and barley sugar. With the dried fruit, generally raisins, figs, prunes, fruitcake. These are all typical notes that you would get in many whiskeys. You're probably familiar. And we get into the floral flavors. Now the floral flavors are more fresh grass and hay, sort of generally, leaves, etc. These are fragrant, greenhouse, leafy, and hay are the subcategories. So fragrant, perfume, fabric softener, barbershop, coconut, lavender. Greenhouse is more geraniums, green tomatoes, florist shop. You get leafy like greens, lawn clippings, pea pods. That's pretty common too. I get a lot of cut grass when I'm nosing whiskey. And hay is mowed hay, dry hay, smells like barns, heather. Heather is one that I don't know what heather smells like, but I Googled it, and if you Google it, it smells like whiskey. Like everything that it says heather smells like are other notes that you find in whiskey. Sage, mulch, again, typical things. Now some of these are at first glance not appealing, but in moderation, and if the balance is right, for the most part, all of these are generally looked at as good flavors to have in whiskey. Next, we get into the peaty flavors. Now, obviously, this comes from if you use peat to dry the barley or dry the grain, I guess. But generally, single malts use peat. So, if you use peat in the process, you'll get peaty flavors. Now, peaty flavors break down into medicinal, smoky, kippery, and mossy. Medicinal being the iodine, it smells like hospital, lint, tar, diesel, all the things that you get from maybe a Lafroig, let's say. Smoky could be bonfire, burnt sticks, incense, peat in general, like peat reek. Kippery is more fishy, seashells, dry shellfish, oysters, smoked salmon, and anchovies. And then mossy, you got moss water, earthy, smells like turf, hemp, rope, fishing nets. Again, these are fairly common, very common in coastal whiskeys as well. Next, we come to the fainty flavors. Now, the fainty flavors are derived from the faints or the ends of the run, so towards the end of the distilling process. These are broken down into honey, leather, sweet and plastic, and tobacco. So honey is the clover honey, heather honey, mead, beeswax, polish. Leathery, obviously, upholstery, libraries, new cowhide, biscuits. I don't know why biscuits is leathery, but you know, it's in there. Seems cereal-y to me. Sweet and plastic, you got buttermilk, cheese, yeast, shoe polish, old gym shoes, and plastic rope. Now again, some of these don't sound appealing, but in moderated amounts in the perfect balance, they can be quite nice. And tobacco, you have dried tea, fresh tobacco, and tobacco ash. So you'll also see some overlap in where like you'll get smoky flavors or ashy flavors or oaky flavors. Some of the fruit or floral flavors will, you'll see overlap in where they could come from in the process. And the last one before we get into the wood influence is sulfury flavors. Sulfury flavors are coal and gas, rubbery, sandy, and vegetative. Vegetative. So coal and gas, you got spent fireworks, burnt matches, and matchbox, pencil eraser, new tires, electric cables, burnt rubber. Burnt rubber is a big one. Not one of my favorites. Sandy, you got fresh laundry, starch, linen, the beach, and sulfur. Makes sense. It's sulfury flavors, right? And vegetative, you have cabbage water, turnips, stagnant marsh grass. Again, a lot of things that might not seem appealing. Some people will, quite enjoy them. Oddly, baby sick is another one. I've referenced it a few times. I don't know. Now we get into the woody flavors. Now this is going to depend on how long the spirit is left in the wood, the type of wood, and what was in the wood previously. So that's broken into woody flavors and winey flavors. So the woody flavors are directly from the oak. How much time you leave it in the oak and flavors that are derived from that. And that's broken down into toasted, vanilla, old wood, and new wood. Toasted is rice pudding, burnt toast, coffee grounds, and licorice. Vanilla is custard, creme, caramel, sponge, Madeira cake, and toffee. Those are very common in a lot of things that are aged in old bourbon casks. A lot of scotches have that. Old wood would be musty, cardboard, cellars, pencil, cork, and metallic. I don't know why metallic would be in there, but ink is also there. And then you have new wood would be resinous, cigar box, sandalwood, cedar, ginger, pepper, and nutmeg, so more spice. And then of course we got winey flavors. Now winey flavors are going to be imparted if the casks used to hold something else. Like if they had wine in them, or they had sherry in them, or they had bourbon in them, sometimes those liquids are still present within the wood and it will be imparted. Not sometimes, all the time. So you have sherried, nutty, chocolate, and oily. Sherried would be white or red wine. Sauternes, I think are, is it the raisins? The gold raisins? Fino, Oloroso, Armagnac, and Madeira, and port. The nutty flavors are walnuts, hazelnuts, praline, almonds, and marzipan. All very common. Chocolate, you have cream, butter, milk chocolate, cocoa, and bitter chocolate, which would be like a dark chocolate, I guess. And then oily, you have linseed oil, candle wax, suntan oil, and olive oil. I'm not too familiar with any of those. Maybe the candle wax, if I'm being honest. So yeah, that's the 8 categories and several subcategories of how these flavors get into the whiskey and what these flavors tend to be. I think it's actually a pretty good tool for like while you're doing a tasting or while you're trying a new whiskey to just sort of reset your brain on sort of what is or may be present, and what, you know, sometimes you draw a blank. Sometimes, you know, you're trying something and just one thing stands out and you can't get your mind off it. But with the wheel, you really look at each category. What am I picking up from each category? And, you know, even which category is prevalent. So like mostly this, partly this, and like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then sort of from each category, what little things can I pick out? Anyway, I'm super excited to break into this 4-grain Wayne Gretzky's Red Cask whiskey. Again, from the Craftsman series, bottled at 50% and made with barley, oats, rye, and wheat. I did a review of the regular release Red Cask. You can check that out on the channel. But this one is a little special. This one is bottled at 50%. This one is a special release. And this one was actually a gift. Bottled at 50% and aged 5 years. Wayne Gretzky's 4-grain. Well, it's quite perfumey on the nose. I'm definitely getting the cut grass. I'm definitely getting the grains. It has a subtle sweetness to it. I'm getting the minty, pepperminty, pine. Yeah, the pine is coming in heavier now as it sits. Let's try the palate. On the palate is nice. There's cinnamon for sure, but it comes a little later in the development. Starts off just general sweetness. Again, a little bit of the pine, a little honey, and then like a rush of cinnamon is what I get. Maybe a little cracked pepper, but the spice stays low. For 50%, it doesn't drink very hot. Wayne may have one here, guys. Second sip, it is a little hotter. Still very nice. I would call it smooth, but not in like the watery way. Smooth like it doesn't burn. It's not going to choke you, but it does, you know, spice up a little bit. It's very full flavored, very rich. The mouthfeel is nice. It's a bit of a treat, I would say. Like it's nice. I would put this out for guests. Good guests, not any guests. You know how that go. Anyway, yeah, I like this. I'm gonna give this an 87. There's some coffee or dark chocolate in, like the cinnamon rush is there, and then as that fades in the finish, there's a bit of bitterness. It's a bit of coffee or cinnamon or something. There's more going on in this than I expected. I like it a lot. So, if you get a chance, I would recommend go out and grab a bottle of Wayne Gretzky's 4-grain Craftsman Series 99 Red Cask whiskey. Well, that's the show, guys. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. As always, I'm Jason. This is It Was All a Dram. Smash the like button for me. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share the video with your friends. Let's start up a conversation. Till next time, cheers.